Good.
Good?
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I am Deb with Top Weddings, and we are going to, are we good?
Yeah.
Just checking everything technical. If anybody is watching live, if you can let us know if you can hear us okay, that would be phenomenal.
I'll just
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
copy and paste it. You're good.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we are so excited you're here. And today we are going to be talking with Misty with Misty Willinger Events. First, we're just going to tell you a little bit of information as far as this live. So we are going to, of course, we're live on Facebook and Instagram. And then also we are live in our 417 Engaged couples group, which has been so incredibly exciting. We have over 40 couples already in there, and which
Awesome.
has been phenomenal. And so many great, just great and encouraging things happening in that group. So it's been really, really fun. So we're going to cover one topic with Misty, and then we will go into the group to finish the rest of the topics. So we have two others that we're going to be covering with her, and we are so excited to have her here. Our last live last week with Celia was amazing, and but we are incredibly excited to have Misty here today. So I'm going to flip through this just to make sure that I'm covering everything. So if you have not already joined the Facebook group, make sure that you join. You can, as long as you're engaged in the 417 area, you can join that group, and we would love to have you. If you want information about it, if you write it in the comments, one of the girls will message you, PM you, DM you, whatever it's called, and get you that information. We'll get you a link, or you can actually go to Facebook and type in 417 Engaged couples, and you'll find it that way as well. So, do we have some people on?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
We have lots of people on.
Okay, so just to recap, in case you just joined us, I am Deb with Top Weddings, and the reason why we're here is because when we started Top Weddings a few months ago, all of the wedding professionals that we met with and interviewed and talked with, everybody was so excited about helping couples, and it's taken us a few months to get to this place, but we want to do these lives every week because honestly, everyone's heart, I mean, Misty's donating her time to come and help couples, because in the planning process, there's a lot of questions, and it's really hard because you don't know who always to ask those questions to, and then and sometimes you just maybe feel silly for asking a question because you don't want to ask a dumb question. No question is dumb when you're planning a wedding, just an FYI. So that's why we're here. Top Weddings, the professionals that are on Top Weddings just are absolutely phenomenal, amazing. We have such amazing wedding professionals in the 417 area, but just so humbled and grateful for everyone that's a part of Top Weddings, because it's allowed us to be here with you guys today, and we really and truly, our heart is to help the couple. So
we're grateful for you for making this happen. It's a really great community.
Thank you. So if you're watching, we would love for you to share, like this post. Of course, give Misty some love. We would love that as well. So let's go ahead and do some shout outs, guys.
Well, we just had Jamie say, "Hey, you beautiful ladies." So she's watching.
We love Jamie.
We have,
and somehow I know which Jamie that is. You know, there's a lot of Jamies, but I know who that is.
And then from our Facebook group, we have Brittany, Anna, and Levi.
Yay!
Hello.
And then from our Instagram, we just had Abigail join.
Perfect.
And then we had Jenny, Party Bus Kings, Miss Ederberg,
Yay.
Sammy Johnson, and then a couple of photography pages.
Good,
Awesome.
good. Well, we are so glad you're all here, and hopefully you stay tuned. So we're going to be answering one question with everyone, and then we will dive into the other questions inside of our group. So,
Great.
so let's get started.
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is Misty, of course, with Misty Willinger Events. And Misty, just tell us about yourself.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone. Yes, like Deb mentioned, I own Misty Willinger Events. I'm the lead wedding planner there. And I've been in the industry, gosh, I guess it's 5 or so years. The majority of that's been spent in St. Louis, but the Ozarks is home, so I'm so happy to be back here. My husband and I moved back last year, and now we're just full throttle planning tons of weddings this year. So I'm really excited about that. We have a little 6-month-old.
Oh, he's so cute.
Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. Shout out to Crew. I'm sure he's watching with Dad right now.
Hi, Crew.
He's totally confused. But no, we're so happy to be back here, and it's been such just a welcoming community, which is why I'm so grateful for you and doing Top Weddings. Everyone really has kind of welcomed me back with open arms, so nice. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, you're pretty easy to welcome back. If you've met Misty, I think from the first time I met her, you just love her. Uh-huh. And then when we sat down and did the interview for Top Weddings, oh my goodness, just your heart and your passion, and not only for couples, but just for this community. And I love your genuineness, and that's huge to me, and we're incredibly blessed to have you. And you guys are all blessed to have Misty today as well, because this topic, I think, is one that a lot of people have questions about, but maybe don't understand what all a wedding planner does and all that good stuff. So tell us about the advantages of hiring a wedding planner.
Yes. Well, as a planner, I think there are many, but I will give you my top 3 that I typically drive home with all of my couples. Yes. And those are, as a planner, I'll save you time, I'll save you money, and hopefully at the end of it all, I'm able to lift a lot of stress off your shoulders. Which that all sounds great, but it's like, what does that really mean? So I kind of want to break down each of those. So
love that.
As far as time goes, right, when you get engaged and then you're fully committed to the wedding planning process, there's a lot that happens in those first few months, right? Yes. There's budget has to be created. There's just a ton of checklist items to get through. And so, we're really lucky here in the Southwest Missouri. We have hundreds of incredible wedding professionals in every category. So you don't have to go far to find exactly the right fit for you. But because we have so many amazing vendors and professionals, that's also very overwhelming for that couple that's newly engaged. So the timepiece on the front end, I'm able to really come in. I meet with my couples for a few hours, that first initial consultation, for many reasons. One, I want to build a great relationship because we really have to love one another, because we're going to spend a lot of time texting and chatting and meeting and coffee dates.
Absolutely.
But also getting to know them on a personal level, right? Aside with budget as well. But what's the most important aspect of your wedding? What are you looking for in a DJ and entertainment, right? So I pull apart all of those pieces so that then I can go back to the drawing board and really give them 3 to 5 recommendations in each vendor category that I think would be a good fit, not just on budget, but also personality wise, style. Everyone's so different. Just like we have a lot of great planners in the area, we're all very different as well. So I'm able to take away a lot of that stress in that beginning time to say, okay, here's my best 5 recommendations in each category, and then we'll set up consultations and book, which is great. So that typically, when I say that to couples, they're like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, because you could spend days and days going through pricing brochures and photos and websites. Right. So it's really helpful to pull that in for them. And then of course throughout the wedding planning process, I'm constantly assigning them different tasks to complete, and checklist items and due dates, and then all the way up to the wedding day, putting together that timeline. It's much easier for me to doing it for a living rather than a couple really trying to sit down and put the big puzzle together.
Right.
The second piece, we got to deal with that pesky budget, right? Money. So how am I going to save you money? Being immersed in the market all the time and knowing different vendors, right? when we talk about the budget and then we break it down by each category, every 5%, 10% you can save here or there, I mean, that adds up at the end of the day. So there could be some vendors that are always at the wedding shows, right? And if you book on the wedding show day, they'll give you a 5% discount. Or for certain venues, they'll run certain specials time of year when it's slower days of the week. So there's a lot of that insight that you just won't know right off the cuff, that I'm really able to help guide and consult them through that. The final one, stress. I mean, this is really important to me because, and I think you've probably dealt with this too, you talk to couples and they're just so overwhelmed and they're stressed and they're like, oh my God, let's just get married. Right. I'm ready to get it over with. And that breaks my heart because it's such a beautiful time in their life and a special moment to be have that cloud of just stress and worry. It's awful. So my goal is at the end of it all for my couples, their whole family, to be able to look back and be like, wow, that was really fun. That was enjoyable. We were present during the wedding day. We weren't always wondering what's next, right? Because that's my job, right? Let me worry and block and tackle about all of those things. And so it really does, just having someone in your corner that's going to block and tackle for you and pull everything together. It's a huge game changer for sure. Absolutely. So those would be my top 3, I think, that I would bring home. Okay.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. That's very, very helpful. And I, in just talking to you earlier, of course, we have a free PDF that you can, that has the layout of the timeline. And as we were creating that, it
snowballs.
It's snowballs.
Yeah.
It's a big list. And we want to be as detailed as possible so that any of our couples that use that, that it really was helpful for them. But, just in what you were saying, that you actually tell us about how you kind of tackle that.
Yeah, so typically what happens if you're newly engaged, you have a parent or a best friend, all in good faith, right? They gift you the wedding binder. And in this it's a little daunting because there's 700 pages of checklists. Right. And as the couple, it's like, oh my God, how am I even going to get through all of this and manage it? Right. I work with the wedding planning software, so we keep everything in one dashboard specifically customized to each one of my couples. I hide the big, scary, crazy checklist. I have access to that. But I task my couples out with things when we need them time-sensitive wise. Right. So, that first couple months, right, it's, booking key vendors, it's creating a guest list, save the dates need to go out by this date, right? So it's kind of homework for the couple, but I'm tasking them out in a much more reasonable manner rather than looking at the big picture and oh my God, how do I get there? It's we're going to get there, but we're going to do it, chunks at a time. And then, we send them daily reminders and monthly reminders, payment reminder, all of that streamlined so that it's just a calmer process than them thinking wow, I'm just never going to get.
Instead of them having to think of all the steps and oh my gosh, what's next, you're really handling already what's next. Yeah. They just get to focus on what you've given them for them. Right. And the nice thing about that is, I know for our 12 to 18 month, it's a big list, especially if you're planning, that far ahead. And so I love how as a planner, you guys are just taking that and saying, okay, this is what's first. And now that's done. So now let's work on these. So
there's so many different phases, even with stationery, right? It's phase 1, save the date. Phase 2, invitations. Yes. Phase 3, it's the day of stuff, table numbers, place cards, and so that can be, as a package, it's wow, that's a lot to do. But it's well, we're going to do them at different times. So it's really helpful for the couple. So it's this is what's right in front of you to focus on. And we're always working, a month or 2 ahead of time. So while we're sending out save the dates, I'm already working on, the invitations. Right. So it's really fluid. It works really well.
Yeah. That's really amazing. And I know just the stress that you take off, let alone all of, because it honestly, and I think that's why wedding planning can be so overwhelming, because from the moment that a couple gets engaged, they, most brides have been planning this day for a long time, and they jump in and they're all excited, and it really and truly it's that deer in the headlight look really quickly, and then all the decisions and all the overwhelming. And so for me, just watching how wedding planners take not make the decisions for you, but they are guiding you, which makes the process so much easier.
Yeah. We're really a team. I mean, between me, the couple, and if mom's involved or grandma, I mean, we work this together, and the checklist, it gets daunting because it can get so nitty gritty,
right?
So it's like things that you normally wouldn't think of, like it's like, okay, buy the guest book, buy the pen for the guest book, test the pen for the guest book, because you don't want to use it for the first time at the wedding and it not work because it's probably a special pen. Wear your shoes around the living room.
Which is something we just talked about, because I cannot tell you how many times I've been at a wedding and I am undoing the box of shoes. Like, I am taking out the paper to get them ready for, and that is, just little things like that, obviously that's why, that's why you're doing what you're doing, because those are big things that you don't think about. And, I always say, no matter how early you're planning, the last couple weeks before the wedding is always some of the most stressful, because it's all the little details. And, with you guys being able to step a lot of that, and because you already know about all those little details, which I feel like when, that's why when I think of a wedding planner, goodness, the stress that you're taking off of them, especially, like I said, with the whole planning process, but then all those little details right before, and then the day of. Tell us a little bit more as far as the day of.
Yes, so I will build out one master timeline that gets also nitty gritty, right?
Yes.
So it starts the day before the wedding, or if we're traveling from out of town, 2 days, whatever timeline that looks like. So I'll be at the ceremony rehearsal. That's where I get family, friends, wedding party lined up. Where to sit, stand, cue the music, all that fun stuff.
Yes.
I give copies of that timeline to the family, whoever wants one, so they know what's going to happen. And if anything weird pops up, just call me or text me, not the couple, so they don't have to stress. But that day of, it's really just guiding the couple through the day and the family, again, so they don't have to worry about what's next. So. Right. It'll start, with hair and makeup, rise and shine, all the way to completion. But I'm there to check in all the vendors, make sure they've got everything they need for setup, make sure the final look has come together, and then, lining up, for the ceremony, cueing them to walk down the aisle, cueing cocktail hour, making sure the photographer has everything they need, and then, first dances, introductions, cake cutting, all of those little details. Will be in that timeline, and be able to just work that list and really guide them through the day. So again, at the end of it, they look back and they were fully present,
right? And
not having
which is so huge. It's so important that on the day to be able to be in the moment, because otherwise it just goes by so fast anyway. But honestly, and them not having to worry. Is that getting done? Is that getting done?
Right.
Honestly, as a wedding planner, I think that is a huge part of everything that you do.
And it's just anticipating guest needs too. There's always going to be things that don't go exactly as planned.
Absolutely.
As an event planner, I know that it's all on how you react, and it's calm under pressure, and you just, you figure it out. And one thing I do hear a lot, at wedding shows when I'm meeting with couples, and we'll ask, do you have your coordinator yet? The probably the most common response is, oh, my mom's going to do it, or my best friend's going to do it.
Right.
And I always caution against that, just because it does take that day away from them. And if they don't do it professionally, it can get pretty overwhelming at times. So I always say, if you don't need a full wedding planner, at least at the very minimum, invest in a day of. I think the stats, 96% of couples regret not having a day of coordinator. Right. If they don't, they look back and they're like, wow, I should have made that investment. Really just so that everyone can be present, enjoy it, and look back and wow, we had a lot of fun. That's what we're here to do. At the end of the day, it's one of the happiest times, in their lives.
So true.
Let's have fun.
That's right.
While we're at it.
That's right. And I really do feel like a lot of brides feel like, oh my gosh, I can't, or a lot of couples feel like, oh my gosh, I can't afford one. For me, always check. Always the amount of stress that you guys are going to take off, and I think anybody that I have talked to, always at least check, because at the end of the day, it's worth it. I mean, it's honestly, for everything that you guys do and how you bring it all in and just like you said, when there's a lot of decisions that have to be made, and when the couple and the mom and the best friend or whoever is going to be helping them, if they can just be in the moment on the day, they will appreciate that so much.
I have a lot of moms that will book me. They'll call me. They're like, "Oh my gosh, please help me! I need help. This is my first wedding." And so a lot of it's like a gift for the parents for themselves,
right.
so that they can just like hang out and enjoy the day. So it's always I've had several moms that have called me and be like, "Okay, I just need you to take the reins," and I'm like, "I got you. Let's go."
Right.
And then we get back on track. So no worries in that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a couple other, hopefully you found that incredibly helpful. I was so excited to have Misty here to tackle that question. And we have a couple other questions that we'll be finishing up in the group. And again, if you are engaged and you're planning a wedding, we would love for you to join us in our couples group, which is 417 Engaged Couples. And just thank you for being here. Thank you for everybody out there that has watched us online and live but so excited that we're here. So thank you all. Make sure that if you have any questions, again, as far as the group, that you can comment. The girls will get right back with you. And I forgot to mention, behind the cameras, we have Shelby and Katie, who are killing it with the all the video and keeping up with the comments and any questions. So again, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and finish up in the group. Have a great day.
Kathy is on our Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
And she commented, "I need help. Thanks to Misty for her help."
Oh,
so she might be, yes.
So she's one of my moms, and I work with her quite a bit. But I have actually never met the bride. Yeah.
Oh,
I work primarily with mom, and we have a lot of fun together. So
good. That is awesome. Okay. So we are just in the group, so hopefully you are joining us in the group, and we want to do a shout out to all. We have, I think last week during the live, didn't we have like
35 or something?
30 brides-ish, and now we have 40.
awesome.
So we want to welcome all of you. We're excited that you joined. We hope that these topics that we're covering today are helpful, and then we already have some questions come up in the group, which hopefully Misty will have time to tackle one or two of those, and then so we're incredibly thankful that you're here. And I told Misty we get to just like relax and enjoy this part, because this is definitely more relaxed.
Yeah.
So yes. So, okay. So are we good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything's still good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So first question that we're going to tackle, or second question, I guess, because you already tackled one. What is the difference between day of coordinator and then full wedding planner?
Yes, that's a great question. And usually, like when I look at my weddings, about half are full planning and then half I'm day of coordinator. Day of coordinator is a little deceiving. So day of, it's also called month of coordinator. It's also called wedding management. It's all the things. So I'll start with full planning. So that's just what it sounds. So you get engaged, it's sunk in, you're ready to start the planning. I should be your first call, or your planner should be your first call to find the right fit for you. Right. And typically how I like to work is I'll meet in person. Again, I want to make sure we have a really strong connection, a good relationship, because we're going to spend a ton of time together. Right. So we'll meet in person, typically for a few hours. That's where I get to know the couple really well and get to know all the things that they're envisioning for their wedding. So what's most important, what's the budget look like, what's your style, what vibe are you going for, and I'm able to peel back a lot of those layers. So with full planning, like I mentioned earlier, I really help with that vendor selection. We're so lucky here in the Springfield Branson area to have so many incredible, talented wedding professionals. But with that, it can also be overwhelming because I get a lot of phone calls of like, oh my gosh, there's 100 different photographers and where do I start?
Right.
So after that meeting, I'm really able to circle back with them and say, hey, based off our conversation, I think these 3 to 5 recommendations in each category, I'm able to present them with a more narrowed down feel. And no couple is ever the same. The vendor lineup always looks different, as it should, customized to them. So that's on the front end. I will connect them with each vendor, set up consultations. I do use a wedding planning software, so all wedding planning is happening in one dashboard.
Right.
So that's where we track their checklist. So I have one big crazy checklist that I'm able to look at. I hide that from the couple so they don't get overwhelmed, and I just task them out with different things throughout the process. It sends them monthly updates. We put their budget there. I'm able to peel apart their budget for each category so they know what to expect per category. We track payment reminders. There's a lot of those, right? Because you're making payments 60 days out, 30 days out, 90 days, depending on how that looks.
Right.
We'll put their guest list in there. That's where they'll track their RSVPs. We will build their floor plan out in that'll help them create for their venue. There's a design studio, so we're going to put all of their pictures and what they're envisioning in there. We've got all the things wedding that's housed right there. So the full plan really is that all-inclusive, from helping them select the vendors, doing on-site tours with the venue, creating that floor plan, doing the checklist, all the way up to creating that master timeline for all of your vendors, being there for the ceremony rehearsal, and then really running the show the day of so that the couple and the family is able to really sit back, relax, enjoy it, and I worry about what's next and really guide them through that day. So full planning, we have a lot of fun with full planning because it's start to finish and we really get to know each other, and working within that software is really helpful for my couples.
Right.
The day of, month of, or wedding management, whatever you like to call it, it's deceiving because it really starts a little bit sooner than that. So for either package, I definitely recommend, book these as soon as you can, because dates do fill up. For the day of coordinator package, for me specifically, I work a little bit different. Every coordinator is a little bit different, but when you book for day of, I'll go ahead and have you start sending me all of your contracts that you have booked, your vendors, as you book them. So the biggest difference for the day of is that you as the couple, I send you the checklist, but you manage the checklist, you book all your vendors, you do a lot of that work on your own. Right. And then once you book those vendors, you'll email those to me and I'll get your file started. Then from there, typically anywhere from like 4 to 6 to 8 weeks out from the wedding is when the couple and I will sit down, and we really put the final touches on that timeline for the day before, the wedding day, and we reel everything in. Right. I think the biggest thing for the day of coordinator, if you're getting married and you've got 6 different vendors or wedding professionals, right, they're all going to have different timelines, right? So you're going to have a Google Doc with hair and makeup. And then your photographer is going to have a pretty detailed shot list and timeline there. So it gets to be overwhelming when you're looking at 5 different timelines and they all look a little different. Right. So I'm able to come in, communicate with your vendors that you have booked to say, hey, send me what you have. I'm going to pull it all together. We're going to all work off the same one. It's really a collaboration between me and the other professionals that we have lined up. And it's just a puzzle, right? So it's like you've got the venue for 12 hours, the photographers for 8, DJs for 4, but we've got a 5-hour reception, right? So it's like just piecing all of that together saves the couple a lot of time, and then we just fill in the gaps on there. So that's probably the biggest difference. Full wedding planning, I'm there from the beginning all the way to the end, and I'm really going to guide you through the whole process, from helping you set your budget to book vendors to remind you to do all the little things for day of. Not as involved, but it certainly keeps you on track. I'll give you the checklist, and then about 8 weeks out, we'll meet together.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good. I think that really, really explained it really well. So thank you. And I really don't feel like I have any questions. Do you guys have any questions from as far as day of and full wedding planning? Good job.
Cool.
You rock that. Good job.
Take it.
Because, yeah, I think you handled that really well. So on both of them, you're there the day of, obviously. Yes. So you're still handling that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'll really be managing that checklist, checking everyone in, getting set up, all that fun stuff. So, yeah.
Perfect. Good. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to tackle, which we had this question in our Facebook group, I think last week, right? So, the question is, what are things to consider when creating a day of timeline? So we touched on it a little bit, and you've already touched on it a little bit, I feel like, as far as as far as wedding planning anyway, because there's a lot that goes into play when you're doing a timeline. But so what are the things to consider when creating a day of timeline?
I think that's a great question. There's quite a bit. I think there's a few things that really will impact that timeline. Photography being the main one, and determining if the couple is going to do a first look. So if you're not familiar with what a first look is, it's when the couple will see each other before the ceremony. So albeit not as traditional, right, as seeing each other right when you walk down the aisle, it's far more common, nowadays than, in past generations. Right. So it's super common. And it's actually a really cool, intimate moment between because it's just the couple.
Yes.
Seeing each other for the first time and the photographer. So it still packs a punch as a really impactful moment.
It really does.
Were you going to say something?
No, I was, yes, it is. Yeah, and that has a lot to do with the timeline. That is one of the biggest questions, and there's a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, I definitely don't want to see each other. And you said just a second ago that a while ago people really didn't do first looks, but a long time ago your venue and your reception a lot of times were in different locations. Yes. Now, majority of the weddings, your reception and your wedding is at the same. So go ahead.
Yeah, which is super convenient too. So if you do a first look, there's a couple things in how that impacts the timeline. The biggest perk, upside is your photographer can really take 90% of the photos before the ceremony even takes place. So they can do couple portraits, wedding party, family, everyone all together, and then right after the ceremony we can all just flow right into cocktail hour in the reception. So that's the biggest pro of doing a first look. If you don't want to do a first look, that's totally fine too. I mean, there's no right or wrong way.
Right.
The biggest difference if you don't do a first look is your photographer will still take some photos before, right? Typically each couple with their wedding party. But we'll definitely need to buffer some time after that ceremony to do a dedicated cocktail hour for at least an hour, maybe hour and a half, depending on what your photographer needs, because you will need a good chunk of time to get the couple portraits done, family, everyone all together.
And you've got wedding parties, so you've got, so you've got...
People don't think about, it's like, okay, if you've got, each photo takes, a minute, and you've got 50 photos to take. Right.
And I think that I said this last week, but I want to say it again. If you have 15 family photos on your side, which is not very many. So if you have you, mom and dad, you and mom, you and dad. I mean, obviously everybody's family dynamics are different, but if you only have 15 on each side, and they only take 1 minute apiece, which that's quick.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm not saying some photographers can do it quicker. I'm not saying that, but you want to make sure that you're capturing everything. So there is a lot to take into consideration.
Absolutely. And again, there's no right or wrong way.
So
we just have to tailor the timeline a little bit different, which is totally fine. And for the cocktail, as long as your guests are drinking and eating food, like they're happy, you know. We just don't want that gap to be too long, right? The other thing I would take, you know, into consideration, I do my timelines a little bit different. So I like to work from the back to the front. So I would say, one, determine what time you want the party to end.
Right.
So the most common end time for a reception is 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, you've got the majority of your guests still there. You're ending on a high note.
Right.
You can do a send-off for the couple, and your money's really maximized. I think 11 o'clock is probably the second most common. You're going to lose, you know, a few guests. Midnight, I never recommend for anyone. It's just late. Maybe I'm just old. I'm not fun anymore. Unless it's a New Year's Eve,
right?
Then it's like, okay, people are already planning to, you know, stay up and be up till midnight.
And a lot of that has to do with your venue as well, because not only do you have to factor in if you have to be out of your venue by midnight, you can't end it at midnight.
Correct.
You have to give yourself time. So,
yeah, and that's really important. You know, as part of a planner, I'm reading through all of those contracts when my couples book their vendors. And so I actually just had one, you know, not too long ago. They had their reception in time at midnight, but that's what time we were contracted to get out of the space, which means everyone's got to be packed up, decor needs to be taken down, guests out. So we
all
have to
your
shift.
Professionals have to be packed up and out too.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. So that's why I kind of like to start from the back and then work. So if we're 10 o'clock, right, if that's our goal in time, typically a reception is about 4 hours long. I would think that's most common. Right. Plus an extra hour for cocktail hours, so you're looking at 5 hours. I don't recommend going much more than that, because 5 hours of drinking and partying and fun is a lot for most people. And again, you want to end on a high note. Right. And then factor in your ceremony anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, and we just kind of work backwards from there. The other thing to take into consideration is sunset.
Right.
We were just talking about the sun being, we're so happy with time change.
Yes, I know.
I love it being
it's so nice. Outside. It's light outside.
I know, it's hard not to go outside and walk. But sunset, it's like, are you getting married indoors or outdoors? You know, is your venue all glass? Where's the sun going to be at? And this is where we bring in the photographer, because they're the expert of all things lighting and placement. And so those are really important questions to ask. You know, do you want to get married at sunset, or do you want, you know, your portraits to be done at sunset? Right. So if that's an important factor to you, then we've got to build the timeline kind of around that. Right. And oftentimes that is the case. And so those are really important conversations to have, you know, up front with the photographer, to bring them in and collaborate and say, okay, how do we want to make this work? Right. So I would say those are the key things to really look at when building out that timeline.
Right. And then, you know, it really and truly, your timeline really starts with hair and makeup at the beginning of the day. And if I could give you any advice, and we will have Jillian here in a few weeks, but you know, hair and makeup is incredibly important, but honestly, your timeline of your day sometimes even starts before that. But you know, give yourself enough time. I think one of the things of really looking at a timeline, I had a wedding at one point, and they timed it by a minute.
Oh gosh.
And I can tell you, just give yourself enough time to be in the moment. I mean, it's like you were saying earlier, the wedding day goes so fast anyway, and if you don't have someone who's helping you with the planning of it, if you don't have that day of coordinator or a wedding planner, or you know, just make sure that you're giving yourself enough time. Don't make it so crazy busy that you can't keep up, because just like you said earlier, a wedding day, not everything goes exactly on time. But I always go back to hair and makeup, because hair and makeup's incredibly important, and it depends on how many people they're going to have doing hair, and how many people are doing makeup, and how many hairdressers and makeup artists that they do have. And but so really and truly, the whole timeline, it's a pretty lengthy process, and there's not really any that are the same. I mean, you're taking into so much into consideration, because some families are really big and they want lots of photos, and then some, and one of the other big questions when you're looking at a timeline is, most important, those family photos are important, the wedding party photos are important, but the most important part of the day is just the couple.
Right.
It's just the couple. And so just, make sure you're giving enough time to, because these are memories. Yes.
I don't do by the minute timelines. And
no one should do by the minute.
A lot of mine are ish, right? So 7:15 ish, because and I tell my couples going into it, we're going to be 5 minutes ahead or 5 minutes behind. It's fine, right? I'm not going to let us get too off track.
Right.
But you're right, and no timeline is the same. If sometimes for a couple they want to be introduced and they immediately want to do the cake cutting to get that photo, and then we take the cake off and we start cutting it.
Right.
Some people walk in immediately and do their first dance. Right? Some people do that later on. I mean, there's so many elements that there's no right or wrong, and it really is tailored to the couple.
Yeah.
For me, I always aim for an hour and a half to 2 hours of unscripted time.
Yes.
I want them to be able to dance and have a cocktail and enjoy it, because if we're working a timeline up until the very end, you will look up and you're like, oh my gosh, what? It's a blur. So I always try to aim, it's like, let's get an hour and a half at minimum for you guys to just enjoy, and I'm not like pulling you in different directions, having you do things, and it works out really well because they're just able to relax and enjoy their wedding.
Yes.
So they don't look back and they're like, oh my gosh, what happened?
Right.
How
Because
is it
you don't want to be at your wedding and everybody else be enjoying it.
Yeah.
And you're not being enjoying. You're not
absolutely.
enjoying it.
Yeah.
So I think that is really such a good idea, and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes, I love it.
So okay. So do we have any? We have a couple questions. I know we do. So.
Okay, so Aranza asked, how do I get a hotel block, and how far in advance should I look for a hotel? She has quite a few guests coming from out of town.
Such a good question.
It's a great question, and my answer for sure is, as soon as you're thinking about it, go ahead and do that. So what typically I'll do I have a lot of out of town couples that come to get married. We'll look at that guest list and say, like, hey, what percentage of guests are coming in from out of town? That's going to dictate, how many room blocks we need to set up.
Right.
And it's important, to do different price tiers also. So, you're going to have, maybe 2 different options depending on what guests can afford and what they like.
Right.
Also, so I would contact your local hotels, immediately. I always look, placement to venue, right? Obviously, closer is better. If they're driving back and forth, or taking an Uber or a cab, whatever that looks like. A lot of hotels they'll do blocks of 10, and then once you fill those 10, they'll open up another 10. But it's really important to communicate that to your guests too, because there is a cutoff time.
Right.
The guest needs to call, mention the Willinger wedding, you get this special rate. But if you pass that cutoff time, then they rent out those rooms to other people.
Right.
So I would say sooner the better for sure, especially, depending on what's going on in the community. Also, if there's big conferences coming to town or concerts, there's so much to take into consideration. And if you wait and there is something going on, that rate's going to be more expensive, and you're just not going to get the best deal.
Right. That's such a good point. Good job. I love that. And I would not have taken into consideration the 2 as far as price points, and the closeness to your venue. I love that, because that really does help your guest as well.
Yeah, and definitely you'll list that on your wedding website if you have one. List those options. Be very clear about how, they go about booking. There's a specific number, the code they have to say, the rate they're going to get. And then also, Airbnbs, you can also, recommend for guests as well.
Right.
And then also communicate transportation. That's a big one for weddings. If they're not being shuttled from place to place, making it known, Uber's available or cabs available, just so your guests have everything in one spot.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Good question.
Good question. Okay.
From Sydney, she said, are there any things wedding planners do that many of us would never think that they take care of?
So we touched on a lot of that,
Yeah.
I feel like, because there was, for me, you answered a lot of questions. So hopefully you got to see what Misty said in the, because I feel like both of those, day of coordinator and just the wedding planner question might have touched on some of those. But
yeah, I aim to, a lot of it probably comes for, the day of part is to take care of all those little things that pop up that you never will ever know about, right? Like I just step in it and take care of it. So it does kind of add up, but again, it's like less stress for you, the better. But I mean, I have a horror story for my wedding. I've been married 9 years almost, and the venue that I booked, they didn't have a venue attendant or anybody, and I was so fresh I was fresh out of college. I was a baby, and this was before my industry experience. But like the venue didn't have toilet paper. They didn't have trash bags for the trash cans.
oh my goodness,
Right, like crazy to me. Like, why would I ever think about that going into it? So it's like any of those weird things that pop up, my team just steps in it and block and tackle, and you'll never know at the end of it at all. So,
and I think that's there are a lot of things that happen on the day of.
Yes,
and the biggest thing is for couples is you don't want to be the one who's running and handling things. You don't want to. Is the reception done? Is everything decorated? Have the flowers done? And I really truly feel like really you're handling all the details.
Yes.
And there are a lot.
Yes.
Of details. There are, we touched on it earlier, but there's so much in the wedding planning, and those details are what gets overwhelming. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
So, and you're handling so much of that. So
that's why I love what I do.
Yes.
Give me all the things and the details and the checklists, and I'm gonna take care of it.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes, I love it. So hopefully that helped, and hopefully that answered that question.
We have our coronavirus question.
Okay.
From Maria. She said, when should I be concerned enough to contact my vendors about the coronavirus and their cancellation policies?
Yeah, that's been I was reading articles actually today about that. I've got a couple of events in St. Louis that have corporate events but have canceled because a lot of people flying in from different areas. I think in this area, we're not at a stage of panic yet, so I would not suggest making any rash decisions. I think inevitably, you're going to have guests that opt not to attend, especially older folks or young kids, because they're, most at risk for the coronavirus. So I think you can expect that. I do find it very important, if you don't have a planner, to review all those contracts, go back and look at the fine print. A lot of those deposits are non-refundable. Some venues or vendors will transfer those to a new date, some will not. And it all depends on when you're canceling it. Are you canceling it 120 days out, 60 days out, 30 days out? I mean, that all comes into play.
Right.
Canceling a wedding is a massive expense.
And I think I want to touch on why, because most couples maybe don't understand why it's such a massive expense. As a wedding professional, as soon as you book a wedding professional, we have blocked out that date.
Right.
So we only have so many months out of the year, honestly, that we are in full wedding season.
Right.
And so, especially for you and a lot of other wedding professionals, you can only do one a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it's not because wedding professionals don't want to just,
I wish I could take them all. It breaks my heart. I've had to turn away several for 2020. It's very rare that I would do more than one in one weekend. So once that date's booked, I mean, it's all for you.
Right. It's all booked. Most of them don't, unless they can do multiple events on the day, your date's booked.
Yeah.
And however early that is. And so, for me, as far as, the coronavirus, most wedding professionals are gonna be there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're, if the concern is, what if they don't come? Or, most wedding professionals, obviously if they have it, or if they've been in contact with it,
Right.
they'll figure something out, or they'll send someone else, or whatever the case is. But most wedding professionals that are in this industry care about the couples that they're in it with, and so they're gonna figure out
Yes.
something to make sure you only get this date one time. So and just like you said, if you're planning a wedding and this continues to might be a good idea to start looking for little things of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, we've seen some fun, which we do during flu season anyways, right? So I've seen little personalized hand sanitizers, right, as favors as people walk into the ceremony, listing on your wedding website, hey, if you're not feeling well, stay at home. Right,
we're okay with.
We will be totally fine. Put the gift in the mail. I'm kidding. Kind of. Maybe not opting out of a receiving line, right? Where your guests line up and you're hugging and kissing everyone. Maybe opt not to do that. I would probably recommend that for sure. Most of my weddings with whether it's the flu or the coronavirus. So I think there's little things that we can all do. All of your professionals can come together and tweak a few different things that won't impact the day, in a crazy way, but they're just precautionary things. I think it's very smart. It's a smart question. I think we all need to think about it. Right now in this area, I don't think there's need for panic, but definitely put in some cute little ideas to try and help.
Yes.
And keep everyone safe and happy.
And the most important, be protective of you guys as a couple. Make sure that you guys are washing your hands and doing everything the health department, because the whole day is around you guys. So just make sure that you're taking exactly. So make sure you're taking this time to if it is a concern for you, that you're taking the extra precautions, because you don't want to be sick on the wedding day for sure. But I think honestly, for most wedding professionals, we're gonna figure out a way. I mean, it's what we do for a living. It's it just is. It's not. There are not too many wedding professionals that call off.
Never been able to call in sick.
You can't. You can't. And it is, and that's why we at Top Weddings, that's why we love wedding professionals, because it is something that you are committed, and you're committed to that couple, no matter what. So
Good question.
Okay, that's a great question.
Perfect.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Anybody? So let me. Sorry. So thank you again for watching live, and thank you, Misty, for being here. And obviously this video will be posted in the group as well. So if you end up getting to rewatch it, that's awesome too. But thank you for being here. We appreciate you so much, and such helpful information today. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.